My parents had the perfect American family, me and my brother, and had us grow up and to look the right look. And my ex-husband was marrying the person that they wanted to be the perfect son-in-law, tall, handsome, doctor, and Christian appearing family. But it was the wrong person for me.
Appearances can be deceiving.
Yes.
All right. I want you to tell me kind of the long version of the story. I'd like you to tell me rather than read what you just did.
Okay.
Because, hello, Leslie.
That was definitely reading.
So just look at it if you need to refresh your memory. But see, that's perfect for Congress, but for the movie, it needs to be you and me carrying on a conversation.
Sure.
So add a little more background about how you were encouraged to marry this guy.
Sure.
And take us into the story and tell me what happened. Look at me.
Sure. I married my ex-husband, Chuck Couts, after he was my medical school mentor, and then we did our ER residency together, and he appeared, he's a tall, good-looking, Bible-carrying gentleman, and held all the appearances. However, when Grace was 6 months old, I was working a night shift, came home to an empty house. He handed me Grace and said, "I'm just not happy," and he had taken everything. From there, he left and went off to Europe for a period of time and didn't really see Grace. When he came back into her life and started seeing her, it was only when it was convenient for him between his travels and his dating and that sort of thing. We had trouble with the court system from the beginning and him not following the things that he took and was supposed to bring back. He had moved out in January, never paid a house payment, but yet had the tax forms sent to his apartment and filed it under getting the tax credit for having Grace and for the house and that sort of thing. He was supposed to have brought back the car, and 8 months after the judge ordered that, he did not ever bring it back. But our real trouble began when Grace was in kindergarten. He decided he wanted to be more involved and appear to be a good, involved father. He had moved further away, and we had been going to court trying to adjust different little things during this time period. He got it slipped in for me to have to do the driving. One day I showed up and everybody is out. His cars were outside. He later that day, I worked whenever Grace was gone, and not on the my 10 days a week or 10 days a month. I would work whenever she was at his house. I didn't really realize anything about, except that it was odd that the cars were out. Later, I got a call on my answering machine to call the police, but I worked at the county hospital. I trained at Compton Watts, and so we deal a lot with police and having to testify in drug cases and things that we get evidence for. So I didn't really worry about it. When I showed back up at work, I asked about it, and they didn't have paperwork, but that often happened as well. It turned out he had said that I had keyed her car, his girlfriend's car, who was outside. He tried to turn it into a felony, and that was sort of the beginning of us him trying to make me look like a bad parent. He wouldn't let me have contact with Grace. We tried getting her a cell phone rather than trying to call at his house. I would try to call, and he would say to the court, Grace was there all day, and Heather never called while I was there. Well, those were true statements. He was at work. Grace was with a child care or girlfriend, and then Grace was there all day, and I didn't call while he was there because he was at work. So it was the beginning of partial truths and manipulating the situation. We had tried we knew Grace was in the middle. She would often say, I feel torn. I feel like a ball being thrown in the air from one place to another. And we tried to step back and let him put on appearances at school. But then it continued to get worse. He ended up moving about a half mile from us. He would tell Grace, I didn't tell your mom because I thought she would blow up our house, or I put a lock on the car gas tank because she might put something in my gas tank. And we tried to get her into counseling. He said my child does not have a psychological problem and wouldn't be involved in any counseling. Later, it ended up he started taking her to a counselor without us knowing. It was at the Sharp Focus Center. We did get a phone call after she had seen us. She had seen my daughter several times, calling and just left a message on our machine that said, "This is Christy Graham from the Sharp Focus Center. Please call us." Well, it was around Christmas time, and we thought actually we had bought electronics for Christmas, and we thought it had something to do with that. So we didn't call back right away because it was nothing about my daughter. When we did go and meet with her, we had red flags, me and my husband, about everything we said. She seemed to be critical of. Later we found out she had already turned us into CPS before even meeting us. On her first encounter with Grace, she had Grace draw a picture of something about your family. Well, my ex-husband had taken Grace to a zoo camp and had a picture on his refrigerator of Grace's face, but surrounded by a snake with the zoo's name on it. She had drawn that picture. Christy Graham turned us into CPS for sexual abuse because she said that snake was representative of penis, and that meant that I was sexually abusing her. So we can tell what kind of qualifications this lady had. She saw the required 8 visits. During this time, after that initial visit that we got a lot of red flags but didn't know about the CPS, we had asked her for medical records of what she was seeing my daughter for, when she was seeing her, because my ex-husband was taking her out of school without our knowledge to go to all of these appointments, and she wouldn't give us the times or why she was seeing her. So we had turned her into the state saying, this is violating HIPAA, and we need the medical records of why you're seeing my child and when, and some collaboration. And the state there was enough things that the state was investigating her for that. When we showed up at court for this emergency hearing, she had not had any other communication with us in regards to seeing Grace. We got an email on Easter Sunday. I was at work, and my husband had checked his email in the afternoon and got this report of all kinds of crazy allegations, and that we had to show up in court for an emergency hearing on Monday morning. When we got there, the judge said, you either have to have this hearing, which my attorney had seen the report for less than an hour that had been emailed to us the night before, or I'm taking Grace away from you. We were able to, because my ex-husband had some things that week, he agreed to let Grace stay with my parents, but still she was taken away with no hearing. Then a week later, we had our court date. We were able to go through and have had somebody look at her report and dictate of how she came up with conclusions you can't make, and that she was not qualified with her level of degree to make any kind of those conclusions or to do those tests appropriately. And my daughter was too young to have done the test, even if you could make those conclusions. The judge heard all of that, then said the time is up, never let me respond to any of the allegations. Then 2 weeks went by where my daughter's staying at my parents' house, and which was, and we weren't able to pick her up from school or anything like that during that time. And then the judge emailed the decision in the middle of school and said, as of this afternoon, he had full custody. We could only have supervised visitation, and at Christy Graham, who worked at Sharp Focus office. So then for the next 3 months, we weren't able to see Grace at all. During that time, Grace called and had left a message and said she wanted to see us, and would we just please sign the papers. And the whole time we'd been working hard to try to figure out a way that we could see her. My ex-husband wanted the names of every single person that we knew, their phone number, their contact information, so he could approve of them as a supervisor, since we obviously weren't going to go see Grace with Christy Graham. Also, during that time, we had asked to try to get another counselor for Grace, and he wouldn't agree to any. So we said, well, why don't you pick a counselor and we pick a counselor, and let the two counselors pick a counselor, because the judge wouldn't order a counseling, and he wouldn't agree to that. So not only was she taken away from her home, she wasn't getting any sort of counseling. It had been very abrupt. The system had failed her. It was failing us. He submitted a diary, had made multiple other allegations of that we had done something. I was always to his car, but it was all during the time previous. Whenever we realized we would show up at a place and he would say that we had done something, and so we started showing up real early. Then he would say we did it on the way out, and so then we'd go early, stay late, and then it got to the point he would act like he was leaving, come back, then he would say we followed him if we went back, or we did something if we went out, and we were having to arrange someone to be a witness with us at all points. He would never, even though he would say that that incident happened on his property, he wouldn't meet us at the 7-Eleven just down the street from his house and 40 miles from our house. It took multiple going to court with Judge Worley to ever get it changed so that we didn't have to go to his property, even though he was the one constantly making allegations. Our judge is Judge Carmen Rivera Worley. Her allegations, or my ex-husband's made allegations of physical abuse. The counselor had made allegations of sexual abuse from the picture of a snake that my daughter drew that was actually posted on my ex-husband's refrigerator. His allegations of physical abuse were 3 separate pictures, all more than 3 years previous to the time of our hearing. And in one of the pictures, Grace had a bright red strap mark, and then he was asked if that was the mark, and he said no, that was from the mark where she was sitting, because she's redheaded and marks easily. And in our defense, we had the paperwork from the American Academy of Pediatrics that in normal childhood, at any given time between the age of 2 and 8, any normal child, it's normal to have up to 3 bruises. And scarily for me, since I have 5 other children, and at that point 4 of them were 2 and under, that all had 3. But when she was my one child, that all I had to do, was keep up with her. And with being a girl versus my other children who were boys, she didn't have bruises, and that he could make this allegation. And the thought of losing my other kids who were just normal boys that might have 3 bruises, when over 6 years he could only come up with 3, was extremely scary for me and my husband. And that the allegations, kept. We'd sit in a counselor's office, and he would say, Grace came home from your house and said she was hungry. You're not feeding her. And within 15 minutes of that conversation, he would say, Grace is overweight and you're making her obese. And, within a half hour, how can we be not feeding her and making her obese? But he is very intelligent and manipulative, and only in the setting of the parent coordinator, who could hear all of that and the nuances and be called out on his false allegations and put the whole picture together, are you able to see that alienation. And the judge never even attempted to hear our side although in her defense, to hear all of that would take up too much the family court's time. With all my kids, I have to teach them, are they tattling, trying to get somebody in trouble, or are they telling me something to try to get somebody out of trouble? And I've taught them that since they were children, but our court system is set up just to have people tell lies and make false allegations and to tattle, which we don't even allow with our kids. Judge Carmen Rivera Worley is very involved with CASA, but had several investment opportunities, and one of them was with Diane Costa, who owns the Sharp Focus Center. Christy Graham is employed by Diane Costa, who Judge Worley and invest with the Sharp Focus Center as a counseling entity. So there was lots of allegations. It's not the right word.
Well, there was immediate conflict of interest bigger than Dallas.
Right, in impropriety in what she's doing. And then it was very poignant that our attorney was not from Denton County, and we had multiple visits to the courthouse, and it was continued unless my ex-husband really needed to push something through. And it was always, the statement was always made that my attorney was not from Denton County, and to remind Judge Worley of my ex-husband and his attorney's contributions, which, as becomes public knowledge, and that attorney's firm did indeed exceed more than any other contributions to her reelection campaign. And you drove past his attorney's office to get to the courthouse, and Judge Worley's signs were obviously in the front of his office as we drove past. So we were only able to see Grace on when he dictated with his approved supervisors, which we ended up feeling very nervous to give him all of our friends' contact information to be harassed by him, and him to judge what something might be wrong with them, that he could publicly find fault with them, because every counselor we had suggested or showed up with him to, if they ever said anything negative about him, he would then say that counselor was bad, and he would never keep going to that counselor. During this time, Judge Worley had told us we needed to go to a conflict parenting coordinator, and we went. But as soon as she realized what he was doing and manipulating, he would say he had concerns about me and my husband, but he could never identify the concerns, because she would say, if you'll tell us what the concerns are, then we'll come up with a parenting plan of how to address those concerns so that you feel more comfortable, so Heather can have unsupervised visitation or increased visitation, because this was becoming very burdensome. To be able to see my child, I was having to coordinate either our pastor from our church or my parents to go pick up Grace, bring her to our house during the times that he allotted, and get her back on time. And our 2 hours of visitation it started whenever he said at his house, and if we were a minute late of having her return to his house, so it was really less than 2 hours. And in that time, he expected us to feed her, bathe her, do her homework with her, and if any part of that was wrong, he found fault with that. And we weren't ever getting to have we were doing all his parenting duties and have under his critiquing mind, but we weren't ever allowed to just go have fun with her and be parents and have any sort of a relationship with her. He finally did agree to a counselor for her that was the wife of an attorney that's friends with his attorney, which made us a little bit nervous. But every previous counselor that he had suggested was not allowed to practice unsupervised, or had their online degree from Arizona University, or some other situation that didn't seem like they were ever going to be capable of dealing with counseling her. But he was the one taking her to counseling for each visit. So, and he would take her out of school. He would, and then he would ask her questions or tell her what to say, and she would tell us. Daddy would say, if he'd buy me ice cream if I said so and so, but we were never allowed to take her to counseling or hear, or her not have that pressure of what to say. Even Christy Graham said Grace doesn't play normally, which she attributed as a fault to us, instead of that when she just told her to play, Grace didn't really know what to do, and would say that because Chuck hadn't told her how to play. He had just told her what to say or what not to say in situations. So from there, when the allegations kept continuing, Judge Worley refused to hear Dr. Threet's report after seeing us for 6 months. She started court early with Dr. Threets. When Dr. Threets was supposed to testify, Dr. Threets was 5 minutes late, and Judge Worley said she wouldn't allow her to submit a report. She wouldn't allow her to testify, even though she was the one who had ordered us to go and ordered the report. At that point, we felt like we were at the end of our ropes in terms of the allegations from my ex-husband were increasing. There seemed to be no end to when we would get unsupervised visitation. My parents and my pastor for 10 months had been altering their schedule and were tired of, having to manage all of that. And my daughter was still caught in the middle and tortured. And so we relinquished our parental rights in order so that Grace didn't have to be in the middle anymore, and to protect other children, but on the conditions that we would have a permanent restraining order against my ex-husband, that he couldn't be making any other false allegations or criminal charges, or he couldn't come near us, so that he couldn't I could protect my medical license as well. And Judge Worley agreed to that, but then closed the case without putting the permanent order. And obviously, you can't retry something that's already been tried, and once the case is closed, you can't reopen it without another hearing. And so it took a bunch more money and finagling in the court chambers for her to put that on. My ex-husband tried to say that a permanent restraining order would impede his ability to work. I mean, I had to take a week's worth of mailings of job offerings that I had, so he was getting the same type of job offerings to be able to show that it wasn't impeding his ability to have gainful employment. But it was frustrating that she had already said and was on record saying that she would put that in the order and did not. Grace still sees my parents, and I'm able to see her through that secretly without my ex-husband knowing. He has since got remarried, and his new wife is better at letting my other daughter talk to her and my husband, and will allow her to go and be around them. But depending on his mood, he won't let her be around me. Like at Christmas time, he wouldn't let her come to our house, but would allow the kids to exchange presents at my parents' house. He won't let her talk on the phone to us. We had tried giving her a cell phone, but he said he changed the settings, and she wasn't able to finagle it to say that we gave her a defective phone You know, and when we got it back, he had just taken it off where she couldn't call. He allows her to be Facebook friends with my parents, my brother, but not with us. But she sends us messages and videos at my parents' house that she wants contact with us and she loves us and misses us, and we're able to get her some messages that way, and you know, at times be able to see her. But obviously, if you're a parent or a child and your parent dies, you would be given loving memories of them and allowed to have pictures and that sort of thing. And even through CPS and adoption cases, you know, it's encouraged to have contact with the birth parents and those memories, and all she hears from them is how bad we are, which you internalize as she's bad or there's a part of her that's bad. Grace was 6 years old when the court case happened, and she was taken to live with him. She's 12 years old now. I have 5 other children. Jacqueline and Jaden, who are now 7 and 6, had, you know, good memories of time with their sister and traveling and playing. But the twins, I found out I was pregnant with my twins in the middle of the worst part of his allegations. In fact, I was trying to go to high-risk OB appointments, my court-appointed counseling with Grace, counseling with the parenting coordinator, and try to work to pay for attorney bills and all of the counseling. And so whenever I terminated my parental rights, they were 6 months old. And so they know a lot from the stories and the pictures around our house and stories from Jacqueline and Jaden, but they don't really know. And then I have a 6th child, Gentry, who was born after Grace was already living with her dad. Grace, I love you very much, and I hope you know that we've done everything to try to have more time with you and have a relationship with you, and that basically you know that you're a great girl and beautiful, and we would do anything to have more time with you. We love you. We still get to see Grace. We obviously would love to have more contact with her on Facebook and have phone conversations and see her and not be under times when it's secret, or that we would never want her to feel like she has to lie and not tell her dad if she's seeing us. But we obviously know that if she tells him she has a good time with us or sees us, a lot of times he tells her, takes away things from her and makes things harder for her. And so it's a difficult situation that we wish she didn't have that pressure on her to have a normal relationship with her siblings and with us. We terminated our parental rights because that was the only option Judge Rivera Worley gave us in order to stop the constant taking Grace and manipulating her and the constant accusations against us that could potentially lead to my other children being taken away or put in the same situation of Grace was in, of being interviewed and manipulated by a system. And with terminating our rights, we obviously gave up our right to any kind of visitation schedule. It's only whenever he deems that we can talk to her. She convinces her dad to be able to, that she should be able to talk to her sister. She's not able to freely call us or have Facebook interaction with us or travel with us or see us, which is a shame. Grace, he told her for a long time that it was the judge, was the big bad Wizard of Oz The judge was the one who wasn't allowing her to see us, and that he would get in trouble with the court system because the court said there was a restraining order against her. In no way, it was only to keep him from making further false allegations against us. Now as she's gotten older, he's told her that we have too many other kids and that we don't want contact with her, which is the furthest from the truth. And everything that we try to send her, we've tried to send her packages, and sometimes she gets them, and other times she, one time it was on the front porch and he tore it up and said it was the dog. Other things she just simply doesn't get at all. Luckily, he still needs my parents to babysit for him, and so I'm able to have contact with her when she's at my parents' house. Occasionally he threatens my parents and says, if you let Grace talk to Heather or go to her house, then you won't ever see Grace again. So it leaves my parents in a double bind, because obviously they want to facilitate a relationship with Grace with me, and they want to have a relationship with Grace, but they're under his thumb too, which makes for a difficult situation for everyone involved. The system needs to be changed in order to have kids be the focus. There's a lot of talk that the kids are the most important and the kids are the focus, but in no part of this was my child the focus. She wasn't allowed to give counseling. She was put in the middle. There was delays at any point, and the biggest part is it was encouraged by the attorneys for there to be fighting and to be false allegations, and for her to be encouraged to say one thing against either parent. In a mediator type situation, then it forces both sides, both parents, to work together, and if they don't, to be punished if they're not working towards the betterment of the child's life. And I would think every child psychologist out there agrees that putting a child in the middle and having a child be surrounded by arguments and not be focused on their schooling and their emotional well-being is to the child's detriment. But in every part was against my child being able to focus on school or focus on her normal kid activities. It was, what did I say that's going to be used against my mom, or what do I not say that my mom said, because he'll turn it and twist it and make my mom look bad or make me feel bad about enjoying something that I did with my mom and my brothers and sisters and my stepdad. My hope is that Einstein had always said it takes looking from outside the normal plan, and hopefully this current system of family courts, it doesn't work, and someone needs to look outside to make a change so that it can be a child-centered and take away from the money-making machine of attorneys and judicial corruption.
My name is Jacob. My name is Johnson.
Say Gentry. Say, my name is Gentry. No. Don't eat it. Don't eat it.
My name is Jaden. My name is Jacqueline.
My name's Victor.
I'm Heather.
Look on film, guys, because I'll whack you on the head.
Hi, my name is Heather Myers, and this is my daughter Grace. She's my oldest of our 6 children. She was taken away after the corrupt and false allegations by my ex-husband.
And I'm Victor Myers, and here speaking on behalf of losing our older daughter Grace. And probably the biggest effect is that she doesn't get to be a part of this family unit anymore and witness all this craziness that we live with every day. But it's a blessing from God that we get to deal with. Thank you.
prior to my experience, I believed in the criminal justice system and our justice system. Now, the only attorneys that seem right are the defense attorneys who will, for a set fee, defend criminal or people who are incorrectly accused of crimes